Hello, wild ones, and welcome back to Alchemy with Sheeana Leigh. I'm coming to you today later than usual for the podcast. I'm currently sitting here completely naked, covered in mosquito bites and sandfly bites, and really at capacity. So, I'm going to bring you this delicious goodness today, following on from our pattern interrupt seasonal arc. And the pattern I really want to name and bring forward in this episode is going to be called Death by a Thousand Cuts. And it was actually coined by John Gottman. And I did a lot of studies around John Gottman and his line of work in my studies. And I don't see this spoken about a lot. And currently, what I'm seeing around me and my clients, and a lot of my friends and network and people I know, we are well and truly in breakup season. And a lot of my nearest and dearest are going through intense breakups, separations, some really toxic dynamics, avoidant type style relating. And I wanted to bring this forward because what I'm seeing is that most relationships don't really end with a huge bang. They don't really end with this sort of betrayal moment or screaming or this huge cinematic rupture, which obviously we have seen time and time again. I'm seeing these relationships just end quietly, even with myself and friendships and, intimate partners. They just end slowly, politely, and they die by a thousand cuts, I like to call it. Text that never gets replied to, or a look that isn't met, a joke that lands in silence, and the body that reaches learns not to anymore. And it's the moments that you really turn towards someone and they've already sort of turned away again and again and again until something inside of you sort of stops asking, stops hoping, and stops aching. And from the outside perspective, nothing looks wrong, but inside, love is starving and there's these needs that are not being met and there's these bids for connection that are being turned away from again and again. And over time, desire starts to dry up, and your nervous system is keeping this quiet ledger of every unmet need until it starts to harden and close. So we call it nothing really happened, nothing major really happened, but something did really happen. And those thousands of small moments that stuff did or didn't happen. Today, I would really like to name the cuts that we were taught to ignore because your body has never been confused about why it has closed. And I really want to highlight that as somebody who has experienced these thousand little micro cuts within a relationship till my body actually closed and desire was gone. And it was really disheartening to turn around and see all of the ways that these little cuts built up over time. And if we spoke about this more, I believe that we can interrupt this pattern. We can turn towards one another instead of away. So John Gottman found he's a really amazing relationship expert and he coins these little micro bids of connection or bids for connection in our relationships. And he discovered that relationships don't usually end because of that one big betrayal. They erode away slowly because of those tiny thousands of little uh, cuts or those little slip ups. And he believes that the core mechanism is those bids for connection. And I really want to name that here because a lot of the time when we're relating with another, we can miss these small bids or these big bids for connection. And basically, a bid is any small attempt to connect. Right? It can be a look or a joke, a text, sharing a thought, reaching for touch and, really joining in and being like, did you see that? Can I tell you something? And I find that with the rise of social media at this point in time and with phones and tech, most of these little micro bids for connection are largely missed. And I really believe that it's because we're so preoccupied and we're so disassociated from the present moment. So the other person can usually, I just take a moment to sit with that actually. And think of times where you have reached out to share something with a loved one or a partner, a friend, and shared a joke or a text or a thought, and it was met kind of not wholeheartedly arms wide open. And then try and remember the response in your body when that happens. There's this kind of micro rejection that you feel in your body and this hardening that kind of guts you a little bit. And it's only slight. And you can see it how over time, if this is happening again and again, and we're constantly missing those bids for connection or being turned away from those bids of connection, we can see how it can completely erode trust and love and connection and intimacy. So when we ask for these sorts of bids of connection in our relationship, the other person that we are relating with, that we're turning towards or reaching for, they can respond in one of three ways. So they can either turn towards, so they can be responsive and engaging and meet you with the same energetic flavor that you're meeting them with. And that builds intimacy, that builds connection, that builds rapport. They can turn away from you. So they can be ignoring you, distracted, or fairly neutral. And another third way is that they can also turn against you. So they can be dismissive, irritated, or something like that, which will hit a little bit harder. But John Gottman believes that healthy couples respond to bids in a relationship dynamic 80 to 90% of the time. And unhappy or collapsing couples only respond to these bids of connection 30 to 40% of the time, or even less. Now, I know it's something that we don't really speak on, and it's something that we don't really talk about a lot. But I really truly believe that most oftentimes we are desiring something, right? Like from our intimate relationships, whether that's reassurance, whether that's care, whether that's, you know, loving touch. Like we have these needs that we're desiring to be met by our partner. And what happens is there is like a little micro betrayal layer that comes in with this. So these micro betrayals, if we're constantly trying to get our needs met and they are not being met, it's the felt experience of repeated unreciprocated bids. So being consistently ignored, emotional enthusiasm is not met, sexual or sensual bids are brushed off, and repair attempts are missed. And there is a whole thing about how repair after rupture is fundamental for relationships and family dynamics, right? So I'll go deeper into that in another episode. But if repair attempts are missed or pushed away, this can create a larger wound and a larger rupture within the body and within the relationship. So if your vulnerability is like met with silence and your initiation is never returned, you can see the larger picture of like these no single moments are bad enough to leave over, but the nervous system and the body always keeps the score. And so over time, the body learns like, I'm alone here. I reach and nothing reaches back. And that's the cut again and again and again until love bleeds out quietly. And all of a sudden, there's a rupture and no repair. And your body has already started to shut down and close because your nervous system is being fed this story in real time that love is not safe, intimacy is cannot be met. Whatever it is, I'm not understood. I can't be seen. I'm too much. And we then start to betray ourselves, like micro betray ourselves for these bids of connection and love. So we will tone ourselves down. We will stop reaching towards the other. We will change certain aspects about ourselves to continue obtaining this love or these needs that we desire. And so it becomes really devastating. And it's really hard to name because there's no real big villain moment in the relationship. There's no clear rupture, and it's just erosion over time. And I believe that it is like severe emotional malnourishment. Sometimes it can be sexual malnourishment, and this creates that desire to drying up, and your resentment starts to calcify in the body. And that means that your body starts closing before the mind catches on. So by the time you start to switch on that you're filled with resentment or you're closed in body, it's already the damage has been done because your body has been keeping note of these micro moments. So it's funny when people say nothing really happened, it just kind of faded, because I see this so much. And it's one of the leading causes of why people get divorced and separate is these little micro moments where you're not present and you're not actually seeing your partner's needs or desires or their bids for connection and deepening. So I believe that, yeah, it's a really yummy topic of conversation and something that we don't speak about a lot, right? Like we see these huge relationship breakdowns where the dynamic is off or toxic and unhealthy, or it's the same pattern over and over again. Whereas this one seems to, I believe people stay in this longer, right? So it's a weird dynamic, and they say that, the average woman stays in a relationship 3 months prior before she actually breaks up with her partner. So she is already mentally checked out and already going through the grieving process and 3 months prior to actually breaking up with someone. And I believe that this is largely the reason why, actually, because a lot of the time women don't trust their bodies, they don't trust what's going on. And if nothing major has happened, we have been conditioned that we need to stay, we stay in these marriages, we stay too long, and we kind of talk ourselves out of it with the pros and cons of, well, he's not abusing me, he's not this, it's then what is it? And they can't put their finger on the pulse of what it is that has created their body to turn away and shut off and close down. And I believe that, yeah, it's this erotic disconnection, this self-betrayal of always reaching not getting reciprocal love and bids for connection. And women desire deepening and connection a little bit more than men. So I believe a lot of the times women have a lot of bids for connection that get unnoticed by their partners. And this is why people stay too long, right? And this is why the attraction dies and how nice relationships still fail. It's almost like this huge grief moment of almost being met, of almost having your needs met, which sometimes can be devastating. Like every time you didn't turn towards me, it creates a wound. The love gets starved. It doesn't explode, but these micro betrayals create that slow collapse of desire. And I believe that once the body is turned off and shut down, it's a lot harder to get back into the opening of that body, especially coming from me, having experienced this. It is extremely difficult. So I would love to, yeah, really let that sit. I'm going to keep this episode short and delicious today, let that land. So, questions that I would love for you to take away is to sit with those needs of yours that are not being met, or those moments in time where you're reaching out for connection and you're not being met, and how your body reacts to that somatically. What sensations do you feel? What comes alive? What narrative gets replayed in your head? What stories do you repeat to yourself when these happen? It could be things like, I'm unlovable, I'm too much, I should tone it down, I should shut up. And these are largely imprinted in us from our younger family dynamics. So it's really interesting to see. And I would also invite you to get really curious and really present, and to see if you can sit with these little micro bits of connection that your partner is calling for and that you have maybe missed, or see if you can get yourself really present and really intimate in the moment to see if you can pick up more bids for this connection, or these needs, these unmet needs, unsaid needs, because most of our needs and desires are largely unsaid in long-term relationships. So it's super interesting to sit in the present and see if you can pick them up for yourself and for your loved ones. And this doesn't just go for intimate relationships. This goes for siblings, my niece and nephew. They have lots of bits of connection that are constantly they put out, right? And as if they're met, they become a lot more stable, a lot more, they know they're loved, they know they're appreciated, they know their worth, and they just grow into such better, healthily attached humans, right? And I'm really big on the legacy that we leave behind for the children after us. Like it really, it really pumps my heart to see these little micro moments and these little adjustments that we can make and pass on, and see that like they're lovable. So with that, I would love to, yeah, end this episode with a little bit more of a pattern interrupt around this, right? Because the problem is never that you ask for too much or that you are too much. It's really a problem of just not being in alignment, right? That you keep asking someone who had stopped turning towards you to meet these needs, or it really turns around to this element of inquiring into yourself about what it is you truly need and desire, speaking up about it. Do you need more reassurance? Do you need this? And voicing that. And if you are met with a loving partner, they will turn towards you. They will never turn away from you. And that is the difference between a partner that is for you and for the relationship and somebody who is not, right? You are never too needy. I don't believe that we should be more chill and, really work constantly at our attachment. Our attachment fluxes and flows. Like there's a narrative around the relationship field at the moment of avoidant attachment, anxious attachment, disorganized attachment. And to be quite honest, our attachments flux and flows with the person that we're relating to. So we can do all the work in the world on ourselves and show up, and it can still not be enough because it shifts and changes. And I feel like this reframes and gets you to stop self-blaming and going into those narratives and stories that you've got on repeat in your head from childhood, and be okay with what you want, what you need, how you show up, and notice that These bids of connection are really important. This is how we build intimacy. This is how we build deeper connection, more love, more ignition, more desire, more sexual expansion, more sensual expression, and playful dynamic in our relationships. So, how do we interrupt this pattern? How do we stop that death by a thousand cuts, right? Because, like I said, it's a nervous system wake up call over time. And sometimes you don't even know it's happening. So, there is this old pattern that I want to name, right? You keep bidding, but if you're doing it unconsciously, you don't know what's happening. Every time you ask, you send a meme and it's not responded to. Every time you send a reel or a TikTok and it's not responded to. These are little micro bids. They don't respond. You minimize it. You shut yourself down. You start to self-abandon. And then the desire collapses and you are constantly feeling like exhausted or numb. And I want to share that you can interrupt this in a few places. So if it happens once, you can let it go. And this is when you start to become aware of it and start to become conscious of it. But what happens over time in my body? So really questioning yourself, like I said, sitting with your body, sitting with the sensational experience to zoom out and track the frequency of these sensations, the intensity, the pattern, the body response, not the story. So there can be a narrative that comes along with it that amplifies it, like I said. Previously, I'm not good enough. They don't love me, like whatever the narrative is, but sit with the body response, the sensation response to closure, rejection, unrequited bids. So notice the bids and notice the responses. This is going to be so huge for you as a woman because I believe that women are more prone to self-abandonment in relationships. So notice the bids, notice your bids, notice their bids, and notice the responses to those bids. And really inviting you to interrupt the over-initiating, the over-explaining, the over-repairing, and the erotic chasing. Replace all of that with pause, observation, and letting silence reveal capacity. I've been talking about observing with my nearest and dearest in the realm of dating a lot lately, and it deserves a whole podcast. But when you are in the observer element and energy, when you pause and do not emotionally react, right? This takes somebody who's in their center. You're okay to feel the feelings, right? You feel the feelings, feel the sensations always, absolutely. Don't act on them. Give yourself spaciousness to feel them and observe what's going on. Actually observe the feelings, the sensations, what's happening. Let the silence and the pause reveal your capacity, their capacity, how they're showing up for you, and what you are doing in the interim. So previously, before pausing and observing, what would you have done? Notice, track, right? Like this is like beautiful, like posturing as a woman, like how to track and see, zoom out and see. Zoom out and see the whole story and the whole nuance and complexities and how you would have rushed in to fix and to close the gap and explain and repair, and how this constantly is draining your energy and you're feeling exhausted, run down. It makes so much sense. It makes so much sense. Let the gap be there. Sit with the silence and the pause and observe. Because this numbness over time will create a huge rupture, a dissolving. And I see it as I said, all the time. By the time most couples come and see me, they're already at this stage where the body has shut down. They already have experienced these micro cuts it again and again. And usually what happens is they show up to do this work, and one of two things usually happens. They either know straight away the body is a no, and their whole relationship blows up and dissolves. I don't mean to frighten you all, or it expands and it transforms and it's amazing. But more often than not, to sit in the truth of reality, they just know that if desire is dying, and it's because your body has learnt that it's not safe to reach. If desire is dying in the relationship, your body has learned it's not safe to receive, to reach. And this is why we have like this huge epidemic of women at the moment that cannot receive from their men and cannot, feel safe and are on nervous system overload and fried. Right? And this is bringing that trust back in, that love doesn't die because we ask too much. Like that is such a myth. I see it all the time of a chill girl. I want peace and I want this. And love requires muchness. It only dies because we keep asking when nothing is offered back. And that is like, if we are in a beautiful relationship, like I will go to the ends of the earth to meet the needs of my love. Nothing is too much. I don't give a shit. And I think more people need to, instead of asking what they can receive and what they can take out off of a person and off of a relationship, what are they giving? What are they being in service to? What can they lay on the altar of love and the relationship? Like, who cares if they have these needs that require tender touch or caressing? Like, as somebody who has experienced a lot of trauma and a lot of childhood trauma, I didn't know I had a lot of needs and a lot of unmet needs because I didn't really know what to ask for. And the more I've done this work, it's an actual honor to show up. It's an honor and a privilege to show up for somebody else's needs when there is love, right? That is love. I show up for the needs of my friends, my family, my clients all the time. And it's absolutely an honor and a privilege to be of service and to show up and to give. And I think that we have forgotten that because we have started to become so over consumptive. Is that a word? I don't know. Consumative in this world, that we have forgotten what it requires for us to show up for love, to do in love, right? This is the pattern interrupt that I would love to invite you all to sit with over the next week and really sit with these bids for connection, how they're showing up with people, and see how your body reacts when people have these bids of connection. See if you can melt and soften into being open to giving from an energetic place of, I get to give, like what an honor, instead of, oh my God, do I have to? Like even the energy there is so important, right? It's so important to make us feel truly loved, held, accepted, seen, witnessed, and understood in relationships, and to then be in our wholeness and our authentic expression out in the world, right? Like this is what we need. And that concludes today's episode. I hope it was really beautiful. I hope it was thought-provoking. I am very at capacity today. As I said, I didn't even put the video on for this podcast because I'm like, no, I don't want anyone to see me. I just want to be in my little womb cocoon. Um, but I hope that this was a really, yeah, thought-provoking and sensational experience to drop into. And yeah, I would love to hear what you took away from this and how your week goes with these bids for connection, these like micro bids for connection. What do you notice? I noticed when I learned about this concept and became aware of it consciously, I became very aware of who was reciprocating, who did not care, and how many times people are looking for connection in these small ways around us every single day. And that is the thought I would like to sort of really solidify in this space. Is like once you start to notice and you can show up with more heart and show up with more presence and yeah, willingness to be of service to another, which again is the ultimate form of love, I believe. I hope you all have a beautiful week. Yeah, hit me with your feedback as always. Like, comment, share. You know the drill to getting this out and share with your loved ones. And I will see you all next week. I will put my free pleasure codes ebook in the notes, of course. And if you would like to support my work, you can always buy me a coffee. I'll put that link down there as well. Apart from this, I will see you all next week. And yeah, sending you all lots of love. Talk to you soon.